Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Anarchist podcast. This is episode 3, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about a number of topics ranging from drugs. We're going to talk about legalization versus decriminalization versus the current state, where most of them are illegal. We're also going to talk about the minimum wage, because that seems to be being brought up in the public a lot, and people wanting to bring in a national minimum wage and stuff like that. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons of that. And I'm obviously staunchly against a minimum wage, but we'll get into that and how I can back that up. We'll also maybe get into Trump versus Sanders, the reality TV show that is politics. The total communist socialist Sanders versus the apprentice reality star Trump. I mean, are we living in the Truman Show? That is my question. It's pretty crazy, but let's also we're going to talk about the disarming of citizens and the gun control debate. I covered this in another podcast, but we're going to talk about it again because Obama's come out and talked about it, and it says that we need to take a look at our gun laws and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about that as well, and the hypocrisy of the Obama administration on the gun issue. We'll get into that as well. And we may save it for another podcast, but I also want to eventually talk to you guys about MRA versus feminism, the gender pay gap. I want to talk about racism, differences between the sexes, and all that. But I think I'm going to save all that juicy stuff and hot press issues for another one. That might be episode 4. So this one we'll just focus on, I think, drugs. We'll focus on the minimum wage, Trump and Sanders, Obama disarming citizens, and we'll talk a little bit maybe about self-defense to wrap the show up. But let's get into the first one, like I said, drugs, and my stance on drugs. Now, keep in mind with this podcast that these are all my personal views and opinions, and everyone will differ, but I try to structure myself where I search for truth and logic, and I try and find truth and logic in all these questions that are brought forth to the public. And these are my opinions and what I've come to and my conclusions on what I think is the right answers. You can disagree. That's fine. And I encourage you to engage in the comment section if you want and share ideas. Because there was at a point in time in my life where I disagreed with a lot of things that I will talk about. So I'm not naive to think that everyone thinks this way. And there's a lot of people. We'll get into it as well when I talk about taxation and stuff like that. But in episode 1, in the comments section below, I thought it was very, very funny. A guy actually posted down there that theft isn't always wrong and immoral. He did a long spew about how my definitions of theft and taxation are skewed and wrong. And just to recap that, my view, when I look at the issue of theft to me is just simply taking something from someone without their permission or without their voluntary consent. If I take your phone, now if you give me your phone to borrow, that's not theft. If I take it from you and you didn't want me to have it, well, that's theft. It's that act of non-voluntarism that goes on. That is what theft is. And people, when they look at the taxation, if there are people living in countries right now, and I'm a prime example as one of them, who wishes that if he went to work I didn't have to pay taxes, and that it was easier to work in jobs where I could work under the table and stuff like that. But when you go to work for any major company or corporations or anything, it's hard. Or even you start your own business, it isn't too long before you start making a decent amount before the tax man comes knocking at your door, threatening you to pay into their system. And statists and people who argue for taxation and the existence of government, they don't leave us people the hell alone. Why can't you just leave the people who don't want to pay into your system alone? And the common argument I get brought up when I say these things is, we'll just move to Zimbabwe, move somewhere else, leave the country. If you don't like it here, then get out. And that's a pretty shitty answer, because it's not easy to just hop up, take your family, or even an individual yourself, if you're just single and you're a single person. It's not easy to just get up and leave and make a whole new life in another country, and finding a country that does not have a tax code. It doesn't exist. I mean, look at this little, if you want to type in Google, Liberland. It was an idea founded by a few liberty activists who found a piece of land in between Croatia, somewhere over there. There's a piece of land that no government claimed. And some liberty activists took that. A lot of statists told them, well, if you don't like the taxes, if you don't like the system, then move and go somewhere else. This is what these people tried to do with Liberland. What happened? Well, the Croatian government started harassing them, and government thugs started arresting them for making illegal boarding crossings and all these other stupid things. There's no place on the planet where you can go the government will leave you the hell alone. So stop making that argument, status, that if you don't like it, then leave. And even if that was the case, that we could leave, we shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have to leave to avoid your immoral acts of theft and forced redistribution of wealth. Now back to that guy in the comments section who said that theft isn't immoral. By his own accounts, then, can I come over to your house, buddy, and just empty you out? Can I take all your shit? You going to be okay with that? Of course not. Of course not. It's a stupid argument. And for those who make the claim, well, you get benefits, you get health care, you get roads, and all these other things the government provides. So if I come over to your house, steal all of your shit, and go out and buy you some things with your money, but I keep a lot of it, that's okay? It's not okay. And not all of our money goes to programs that everyone agrees on. If that were the case, we wouldn't have the divide of the left and right, Democrat versus Republicans, and conservative versus liberal. There's people that don't want to fund welfare. There's people that do want to fund welfare. People that don't want to fund wars in the military. There's people that do want to fund them. So we see there's lots of disagreements in the country on these issues. So a lot of people are forced to pay for shit that they don't want to. And I think that's really wrong and immoral. And the fact that our system is designed like that is why it is flawed and skewed, and why we see all the problems we see today, which is wars, aggression, victimless crimes, people being jailed for victimless crimes, and all the bullshit we see in society, the decay, the destruction, the death and the loss, the pollution. All this crap is resulting in having a system based off of taking people's shit and paying for shit that people think they want. And we find, the free market's a prime example, when you let people spend their money 100% how they want to, it's better that way. And the markets innovate and create things. Nobody forces you to go out and buy electronics at the store, iPads or an iPhone or whatever the case may be. The item, nobody forces you to buy that at the store. You go and buy it because you want it. And the iPhone or whatever the product being sold, that company thrives because it's giving you a product or service that you want, and you're voluntarily paying for it. That's why it works. That's why we see massive innovations in the free market, phones and everything getting better every 5-6 months now. But yet government roads, government healthcare, all these things that government runs seems to be still lagging behind in innovation. Back in the Stone Ages. I mean, just look at the roads as an example. We had the same speed limits that we had back in the days before we had seatbelts and airbags and all that other goodies that cars are built with now. But we still have to drive the same speeds. It's ridiculous. The speed limit's just a rule put on the road so that people, like the government, can pull you over for a speeding ticket. And it's a money Ponzi scheme. Do I think people should drive on the road 200 miles an hour like a madman all the time? No, absolutely not. But at least if the roads were privatized and not run by the government, then people who own those roads could contract and make up whatever speeds they wanted. So maybe someone could have a highway that has no speed limits, and people could have highways and roads that have speed limits. And at least then people would have the options. I mean, let's look at the Autobahn as an example. The Autobahn is a highway in Germany that has parts on it, and there are other parts in the highways. I think there's even highways in the United States that have this, where there's parts that have no speed limit. And if you analyze and look at those roads and you say, well, geez, by that account, then there must be people driving like madmen on them. There must be crashes every day. And the Autobahn is actually one of the safer highways in the world. And it does not, eliminating the speed limit does not result in people driving like a madman and a bunch of people killing people. It's just like if you eliminated the law tomorrow that it's not okay to kill someone, doesn't mean, just because there's a law that says that, doesn't mean I'm not now, oh, well, now there's no law saying it, I'm going to go do that act. No, people don't do things because we know right from wrong at an early age. And the average speed on the Autobahn is 140, 150 kilometers an hour. So the average speeds of what normal people drive nowadays on roads with speed limits. Because it makes sense to drive a sensible speed because gas mileage is better and whatever is a safer situation you want to put yourself in. But I'm getting off topic now, and I just want to address at the first of this one because I did see that comment in episode 1. And the fact that guy had the nerve to say that taxation isn't always immoral and my views of it is wrong and skewed, and that I couldn't believe it. I can't believe that people can actually try and make the argument that it's okay to steal people's shit without their consent. But whatever. I mean, it exists. That's why we see it exist today. I mean, there are communists. I mean, there's the communists that know that it's theft, and I guess they just love forced redistribution of wealth. But of course, people like that would love it because they benefit from it. They benefit from stealing people's wealth because then they get things from it. But they're willing to overlook the immoral act of theft because they get some benefits. And that's where I draw the issue. I think we should structure our society on morals first before whatever good outcome may come. It's just like the same excuse if you were to go back in a time machine right now, back when slaves existed, and you said, listen, guys, we got to end slavery. I've come back through history and I've realized that this is an extremely moral act. You guys can't own human beings out here on the cotton farms here. They would say to me, well, if we get rid of slaves, who will pick the cotton? And back then we couldn't fathom or imagine that the free market and human ingenuity would go and create these beautiful technical machines that basically eat up the ground and do all the work that the slave used to do, now in electrical form, in a robotic form. So to say, if we structure our governments voluntarily, people voluntarily paying into services that they want to instead of forcefully like currently, how will it work? How will it run? We don't know. That's why a lot of people, they try to ask me 100 different questions. Well, how will the roads get funded? How will this and how will that and how... Why can't we just address the fact that we have a system based off of morality and let's, I'd rather have a system based off morals first, and then usually history has shown us that when we do that, the outcomes usually are beneficial. Just like going back in time, you would never say, well, listen, I don't care if it's immoral to own a slave, we have to have cotton picked. That's not a good excuse. And it's not a good excuse to call for taxation when the act is nothing more than forceful theft. So let's get into the next topic now about the drug issue. And when I look at the drug issue, to me, it's just an individual choosing to put a substance in their body. Whether that substance is beneficial or negative doesn't really matter to me. Because if you want to profess to live in a free country or be a free man, the whole concept of being free should be having the option of what you can put in your body. Because if you don't own yourself and your body, then you're not free. So people will say, anytime you hear the argument why drugs should be illegal, it's because, well, drugs are bad. Drugs are bad. I love the South Park episode there where the teacher's always going, okay, drugs are bad. Because it's exactly that. The only excuse people have for why drugs are illegal is, oh, well, drugs are bad. Well, so are cheeseburgers. But are we going to make cheeseburgers illegal? And when we see people running around that are so massively obese, they're driving around in little carts to lug themselves around. There are a lot of things on the planet that can do harm to us if taken over too much amounts and not done in moderation. Too much pop is not good for you. Too much sugar. Too much fast food, like I said. Some people can argue one glass of wine a day is beneficial, but if you drink 10 glasses of wine a day, it can have negative effects. You can be an alcoholic. So the fact that some people are irresponsible with these substances, that now we should make it also illegal for all the people who can be responsible with them, is also a major, major issue I have, and an issue in conflict with people's freedoms. People should have the right to do and put in their body what they want. That's the whole concept of being free, being a free human being. So my issue on the drugs is obviously all drugs should be legal. Even heroin, even meth, every single one of them. And if you look at countries where they do decriminalize all the drugs, you find that they do actually better. That drug-related deaths go down, less people use. And people would think, well, if drugs are illegal, then people then would just be automatically running to use them. And that's not the case. The same way when alcohol prohibition was brought in and alcohol was illegal. And here's another thing I find hilarious. Alcohol and cigarettes, legal, kill more people combined than all of other illicit drugs combined, cocaine, meth, heroin, all of them. If you add all of them together, all of their deaths a year, they still don't amount to the ones that nicotine, tobacco, cigarettes, and alcohol kill in a year. So if anyone who ever wants to make the argument, well, we need to ban meth and heroin and all that because it kills people, well, then why the hell are cigarettes and tobacco legal? They're legal because the government can tax them and regulate them. And it's hard to tax and regulate a marijuana plant that you can just throw down in your backyard and grow in a garden. That's why there's an issue. There's also, if you've ever studied the history on marijuana, and hemp was what marijuana is made of, the leaf, the plant there, is that the stem and the hemp of the marijuana is actually many, many, many benefits, not only to smoking it, but you can build stuff with it. Paper, cars. So it's got many industrial benefits as well. And back in the day, the paper and cotton industry and stuff like that had major issues with this, and they wanted to stifle the competition, and they made marijuana illegal. There was the whole reefer madness scare in the early 1900s or whatever it was, and that's basically why. Because here's another thing that pisses me off. There's a lot of people that get so mad about the environmental issues. Oh, they're cutting the forest too much, and there's so much damage, and we need trees, and blah blah blah, and pollution, and literally you could replace all of paper and all the things that trees make with hemp overnight if we started growing hemp. And hemp can grow seasonally, and a tree takes 20, 30, 100, or however years to grow. We're doing more pollution and damage to our earth cutting all these forests down. We could simply be using hemp. It's ridiculous. Not to mention all the medical benefits to a lot of these illicit drugs. Cocaine, marijuana, and stuff like that. LSD. Mushrooms. There's a lot of research coming out now showing that mushrooms and some of these psychedelic drugs have beneficial effects on depression and stuff like that. And PTSD. And there are 100%, you can go watch it on YouTube, video clips of proof that you'll have a baby, a child, or adults in some situations having many, many, many seizures, take some marijuana droplets, oil, in oil form, and stop having seizures. So how can you deny the thousands and millions of people suffering because drugs are illegal? It's immoral. It's wrong, and it's why I talk out about it. It's why I'm doing this podcast. It disgusts me thinking tonight of how many people are dying because they're using dirty needles and other things that could be fixed if we legalize drugs and you take it away from the black market, so that if drugs were legal, and when I talk legal, we're going to talk about the discrimination legality aspect after this, but when I say legal, just think of I'm not talking about taxation when I say that. So, but if all drugs were legal, then at least that meth head or that crackhead could go to the pharmacy or go to a doctor or go somewhere where he can get drugs that he knows are pure and aren't cut and aren't going to kill him. And there's many people that are dying. I'm guaranteeing this podcast right now, someone will die of drug overdose because it was cut with something bad or something. And that's because drugs are illegal, and that guy has to go and seek out the black market and the shady guy down the alley to buy his crack from. And then there's the whole issue, and science now has been more proving our point to the facts that drug issue is a medical issue, not a criminal issue. If you look at people, majority of hardcore, and this is backed up in facts and stats, and you can go look it all up. I'm not going to pull it all up for you now for time's sake. Go do your own research. I want you guys to listen to me anyway and say, oh, he's wrong. Well, go prove me wrong. Go look at it. But what I'm about to say is 100% facts. If you understand and you look at all these people that are extremely addicted to drugs and in these hard shapes, and that homeless guy who's smoking crack all day, he has went through trauma and bad incidences in his life when he was younger that has brought him to that point. There's no babies born wanting to smoke the crack pipe. Okay? It's a health issue. It's an issue that needs to be addressed with doctors, not lawyers and police and judges. And what do we see most times? You take a drug addict, you throw him in jail with no help, just lock him in a cage, no medical help. What's he do? He gets out of jail, he goes back and does drugs. But what do we see in countries that legalize it and make it a medical issue, and that heroin addict, instead of going and get sent to jail, maybe gets sent to a doctor? We see that there's a lot better situations and people bounce back and do better. I personally know this issue because I tend to enjoy to smoke a little marijuana on occasion. And I know for a fact that it's because it's a coping mechanism. It's not a criminal issue. Majority, like I said, of these people that are really addicted to drugs need medical help, not a jail cell. And that's what I want to see happen. And every day that goes by, thousands of lives, maybe even more, hundreds of thousands, who knows? Well, not daily, but for sure thousands daily, completely destroyed. Well, no, you can make the argument hundreds of thousands destroyed because their families and stuff like that. The fathers that are taken out of the home, put in jail now, and their mother and kids are left without a primary caregiver, someone to bring home some money and bacon now because daddy got locked up because he had a bag of weed or some crack on him, or whatever the case may be. It's ridiculous. And to me, it's a freedom issue. The person should have the right to put in their own body whatever they want. You can't ever make the argument that, well, we got to protect them from themselves. I mean, Jesus, a person could go down to the kitchen and grab a knife and stick it through their head. People, if they want to hurt themselves, can do it. Like I said, sugar and too much crappy food could have just as much negative effects as all drugs. I mean, look how many people die each year from health-related issues that are related to unhealthy lifestyle, like eating crap and not exercising. I bet you that kills probably just as much or more than drugs do. So it's ridiculous, the drug issue. And my stance, if you haven't known it by now, is clearly every single drug should be legal. Legal, able to get easily. Not illegal. It should be a health issue, not a criminal one. So now let's get into the aspect of decriminalization versus legalization. And that simply means decriminalization just means no taxes. They just take it off the books. And legalization in a lot of cases comes along with the taxes. And me being a staunch anarchist and someone that opposes the existence of a state, understanding that the state is immorally flawed because it's based on theft, that no, of course, drugs shouldn't be legalized. Decriminalization is always the better situation. Because when you give politicians all this extra drug money now that they'll get from drugs, like you're seeing in Colorado, yeah, they send some of it to schools and some of it to some, but most of it goes in their goddamn pockets and corrupt insider deals and all this other bullshit and wars and NSA spying, and there's so much of the money that goes to stuff that's not beneficial for the populace. So for me, legalization versus decriminalization, hands down. Leave taxes out of it. I don't even want taxes unless they're voluntary. And if they're voluntary, well, I wouldn't even consider them a tax. So I think that's pretty much a good recap on the drug issue. I think I've covered it pretty well. And I think now we'll move on to the next topic, which will be the minimum wage. Because on a whole, when you sound, hey, do you want to get minimum wage? Do you want to raise that? Well, if you're a minimum wage worker, I mean, this probably sounds great. And considering a lot of the voting populace, there are a lot of people that are minimum wage and they're voters who wouldn't want to get their pay increased. But you gotta look at the minimum wage issue on a philosophical manner. And what the minimum wage issue simply says that it's illegal. Let's say the minimum wage gets passed for $15 an hour. Now that next day it'll be illegal to pay someone $13 an hour. And that is insane to me. That is completely insane. That is illegal for an individual to pay someone what they want to. When you go to work, it's a voluntary issue. You're not being forced to work. And I hate how the communists and some people say, oh, yes, you are. You have to work to live and blah, blah. We'll go back to hunter-gatherer style, or, do other things, or live within real poor or within your means if you don't want to work. If you don't want to work, you're not going to have money. It's bottom line, simple as that. And people are not owed to give you anything. I mean, they don't owe you nothing. If they want to voluntarily give you money and charities are very successful. They donate billions and billions of dollars each year to charities, so people do give and are generous. But if they're giving it voluntarily, I'm okay with that. If they're having it taken from them and given to people, that's where I draw an issue. And minimum wage, you're telling an employer that it's illegal to hire someone for a certain amount of money. And there are certain jobs that just do not add up to $15 an hour, that are just not worth to pay someone $15 an hour. What if you wanted to pay some kid who maybe is like 12 or 13 years old and he wants to come over and cut your grass, and the cut the grass is going to take about an hour to cut it, and you want to give them $5 to $8. The fact that that's illegal is insane to me. If the kid feels that it's not enough money, or the parents of the kid feel it's not enough money, well, the kid doesn't do it, and whatever, it's fine. If the kid wants to go and cut someone's grass for under minimum wage, let him cut the fucking grass for under minimum wage. What the hell's the issue? It's disgusting. It's anti-freedom. Minimum wage. People should have the right to pay people what they want. If some employer comes up to you and offers you $5 to do the extremely hard, difficult job that you feel should be paid $15 an hour, well, then don't work for the $5. And then people say, well, someone else, illegal immigration, the immigrants are taking our jobs, and they took our job. A South Park episode. And if that's the case and they're taking your job, well, then it's pretty sad that an illiterate person from another country can come in and take your job, then find another job, then build upon yourself and make yourself have more skills and things to offer the world. But it shouldn't be illegal for someone to pay someone a wage that they feel both people feel is appropriate. No, you see some situations where I've watched documentaries where Saudi Arabia has a lot of wage slaves, where basically they promise these people from other countries, come over to Saudi Arabia, help build this beautiful nation, and we'll promise you this wage. And they get over there and they don't actually give them the wage, or they get them in situations where their living expenses is almost what they pay. And there are situations that are messed up, and I don't agree with, where people actually become kind of wage slaves. If someone is physically being forced to stay on the property and work, then yes, that's an issue I have. But if people are voluntarily consenting, there's no issue. And that's what freedom is all about. And I'm all about freedom. And minimum wage is anti-freedom. And like I said, there's just so many jobs out there that just don't qualify the $15 mark or whatever the minimum wage offering may be. Maybe you're a person, like I said, who just wants to cut grass. Maybe you're a person who just wants to tutor in your spare time. Whatever you want to agree to get paid, it shouldn't matter or whatever. I think the government should stay the hell out of it. So I think that's a pretty good cover. There's not much I can really talk about or go into at length on the minimum wage issue. It's pretty self-explanatory for me. Someone come up to me and wanted me to cut a golf cart or cut the golf course's grass, which would take me all day, and they offered to pay me a couple dollars. Well, I would tell them, get lost. It's not worth that for me. But they should have every right to have that, to make that offer. And that's my stance on minimum wage, summed up, I guess. So I guess we'll move on to another topic. Let's talk about Obama recently now coming out since this recent school shooting in Oregon or whatever it was. There seems to be one now every week, these shootings. And I also hate how they're so heavily publicized on the news, because a lot of these shooters, you go and find out in their bios and stuff that they wanted the fame and they were seeking the media attention. And sure enough, the media whores go and play this asshole's face on the news every day and run his face and make him famous, and you're doing exactly what the idiot wanted. And now you're just encouraging some crazy lunatic to maybe go and do the next one now, glorifying this other one. And I'm sick of the news covering it. My stance on these mass shooters, we shouldn't even mention their name or show their faces. They're scum. They're trash. Anyone that would go out there and harm individuals, especially children, and in schools, is disgusting. And the fact that we put these people on the news and glorify them the way that these news stations do is disgusting, and it's why we're seeing almost one every week now, because they love the fame from it. Same with that employee who went rogue or whatever. He filmed it himself. He knew that putting it up on his Facebook and everything, he knew it was going to be all over the news. And he was going to be the major issue. And a lot of these sick, messed up fucks who are on a suicidal rampage, who don't care about their own existence, want to go out with a bang. And it's disgusting that the news props this shit up. And it's why we see repeat of it. And I'm disgusted with how the news handles these mass shooters. But let's get into what I'm more disgusted about. Is Obama, the nerve to come out after, once again, and all these media whores hop on the bandwagon of gun control issue. We need to ban the guns. If he couldn't have got a gun, this wouldn't have been a problem, blah, 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 blah. And literally the hypocritical piece of trash, Obama, asking Americans to give their guns in to him. Well, literally that same week, his administration drone strikes innocent civilians and, in one case, a hospital. You hypocritical asshole, Obama. You piece of trash. Coming out and asking Americans turn their guns in, asking people to turn their weapons in. Well, you go out and drone strike innocents. What's more dangerous? A bomb, a drone, that kind of equipment, or a gun? I think you probably do a hell of a lot more damage with a goddamn drone and missiles than you could with a gun and some handguns and an AR-15. But yet we trust explosive and nuclear launch codes and drones and tanks and all this shit the military has. We trust that with these government thugs, and we trust that with people. But we trust people with nuclear launch codes and, like I said, rockets and all this dangerous equipment, but you can't trust a person with a gun. It's absurd. It's retarded thinking. And the hypocrisy in it. The government has an incentive to disarm the population because it consolidates their power, monopolizes it. It stifles any revolt. You're not going to overthrow a big, powerful government if none of your people have any way to fight back, if you're outnumbered, outgunned. And that's why we have the Second Amendment. That's why we have the right to defend ourselves. Not only do we have the right to defend our family, and if a person comes through the door, or if you're driving in your car and someone tries to rob you, should always have the right to defend your life. And the fact that Obama can come out, the hypocritical asshole, and literally tell people turn him in while he's drone striking people, it's absurd. And like I said, people will make the argument, well, we can't trust people with guns. Well, you do trust them. You trust the police. You trust the goddamn Secret Service. You trust the military. You trust people who... And look at the damage that the military has done. Look at all the collateral damage over the last 100 years. And the wars and governments killed more people than any people, average people shooting people in the streets have. Why did Hitler want to take the guns from the population? Why did Mao want to take the guns? Because governments know if you take the guns from the population, it's easier to keep them in control, keep them in line. So people better realize that and realize it real quick. That's what the government, they have an incentive to do. They don't care about the children and killed at the schools. They don't give a shit. They're seizing an opportunity. That's all it is. And I feel that's why they glorify these shooters, because they want to encourage it. So they can bring it up again next week when a new shooting comes. And they want to keep shoving it in their faces. And, oh, look at the children. Oh, look at the children. But if you go and look at all these goddamn mass shootings and where they take place, they take place in gun-free zones where there's no guns around. And Obama and anyone out there who calls for gun control and thinks that, oh, well, you don't need guns to protect people and gun-free zones work. Well, then how come Obama has Secret Service? How come the Pope has like a Secret Service type? How come all these politicians run around in their motorcades, a lot of them bulletproof, a lot of them in the times with bodyguards and Secret Service all walking around them with guns? If guns don't protect people. Guns in the right hands protect people. We know that. You can pull up YouTube videos, countless ones of them, where concealed carry or gun holders have stopped crimes in action. Guy comes in to rob a store, convenience store owner luckily had a gun under the counter, stops the store from being robbed. It's the only solution to deal with that kind of aggression. What is this saying? I'm not a religious person, but I'm just going to say this saying here. God made people, and Colt made Colt, being the gun manufacturer, made people equal. And that's basically what it is. And when you get a crazy psycho coming into on a school property with a gun, and there's nobody else on the school premises with a gun, he has free range to do whatever he wants. There's no resistance. And that's why we're having the issues we're having. And why did this school, this Oregon shooter, why did he choose that school? Why didn't he go try and shoot up any place that had security guards or armed people? Because it's common sense. Why don't we see banks or places with armed guards in them, jewelry stores and stuff, getting robbed and shit all the time as much? Because people know if they go in there, they're going to be met with resistance. Am I calling for us to make the schools look like prisons too, though? Absolutely no. I don't want a bunch of armed guards walking around the school either and turning our classrooms into prisons. But simply allowing teachers nationwide, or even on colleges, kids that are old enough and are old over the age and old enough to own a gun, to have the option to have concealed carry, it would definitely put the fear and the hesitation into any future shootings. Because the shooter would then think, I'm not 100% sure if when I walk on this campus, I'll be met with any armed resistance. So the answer to fix school shootings and to stop this terrible tragedies we see every week is we have to allow the right to have people to defend themselves on school property. You have to allow teachers who want to conceal carry, or whatever the case may be, hire a couple armed, not a lot, maybe even just one or two armed security guards and stuff. They could even be plain clothes persons and just blending into the crowd of the school so the kids don't feel the military presence. Who knows? There's many solutions. But we do know the current state isn't working. And we do know that every time there's a mass shooting, it happens in a gun-free zone. Nobody's going and shooting up the local gun store. Come on, just think about it, folks. So the gun issue is not an issue. The only way to stop a crazy man with a gun is a good person with a gun. And we can also look at, how do you stop the crazy person from getting a gun? Now, that's a good conversation. But it's also a touchy one. Because I truly believe that I don't think you can stop people. There's just too many guns in the black market. There's too many guns in the streets. There's just too many weapons. I mean, even if you're mechanically smart, you can even make your own gun. It takes a little bit of engineering effort, but you can make your own gun in the garage. And now with technologies and Cody Wilson coming out with the invention of 3D printers and 3D printed guns, and the way technology is moving, I don't think we're going to eliminate guns. So you have to then equalize the playing field. And just another thing on Obama, which also, the hypocrisy is so rampant, is you see Obama coming out and wanting people to turn him in. Hand in your guns, folks. We need to address the gun control issue, literally while he's arming ISIS. Obama wants you to turn your guns in, but Obama's administration and the government is giving weaponry to terrorists. The absurdity, the hypocrisy. It is just so... If anyone had any brain at all and looked into the gun issue and looked into, how come Obama is calling for gun control, but he has Secret Service all around him? If gun-free zones are so effective, why doesn't the White House have a gun-free zone? And why is Obama giving guns to ISIL, but wanting us to give ours up? If anyone who just took, like I said, a few seconds to look at the gun issue, they'd realize and get to the conclusions that I've came to, if you have any sense in your head. That's what's really scary to me, too, is I look around and I look and I say, is it really this many people who are this senseless, who are this dumb, And you really believe that if you take guns away from people that now the world's going to be more safe? I surely hope not. But who knows? It's very possible. And there are a lot of dumb people out there. So we talked, let's do a recap now. Talked about the drugs, my stance on them. All drugs should be legal. We talked about minimum wage and how I think it's immoral and a person should have the right to pay someone whatever they want. It's a voluntarily interaction between two individuals coming to a conclusion on what they want to get paid. So you want to pay a guy $5 to mow your grass, that shouldn't be illegal. And we talked about Obama and the gun control issue, disarming citizens. We talked a little bit about self-defense in there as well. About the whole, the only way to stop a crazy guy with a gun is to have a gun, and you should have the right to have a gun. We're rolling up on 46 minutes now into the podcast. I think I'll probably wrap it up about an hour. So 15 minutes in closing. What do I want to talk about? One last issue. I guess we'll shove in I guess I'll just talk a little bit about Trump and Sanders. I don't got really much to say about them because I despise the political system so much, and you already know my stance on taxation and government, basically, if you've been listening to the podcast. So you know that I think this is just a reality TV show. But let's look at these guys' policies. You got Bernie Sanders, who's a complete socialist, a communist, who loves taxation and theft, who loves redistributing people's wealth around. And it's very, very scary to see that this man is doing so well in the polls. It's crazy to see that America, once capital nation, free market, and has a communist, socialist, doing well in the polls. That's so anti-American. It's crazy. But it's also showing the major gap we see in the population. Seems to me we got the dumb hordes of people who want to steal the money from the wealthier, the people who make more money, give it to themselves, and we see the wealthier and the people who do something and make themselves some money wanting to fight back the hordes, wanting to steal all their money. And you got Trump here wanting to build a wall, like as if a wall is going to keep immigrants out. You have immigrants who come from Syria and other places over the seas, not just counting the Mexicans, but you have immigrants that make it across the sea. And if the entire ocean and getting into another continent couldn't stop immigration, what do you think a wall is going to do? And to me, the wall is a very dangerous notion, because a wall, to me, if you build a big wall around the United States, I think it'd be used to keep the people in rather than to keep the people out. And I don't want to be walled up. And I mean, it's just absurd that we have communist, socialist Sanders on one side, Hillary Clinton with him as well, which is a 70. And here's another thing I want to talk about. Why the hell is everyone who runs for politics and all of our presidential options extremely old people that are about to die? Okay, you don't elect into office 70 and 80-year-olds who are having health issues. Okay? Why don't we get someone young? Someone who knows. How come we never see presidents that are like 40, 50 years old, 30 years old? They're always these old hags. Like Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump. Like, these people are old. They have an old mindset. And we see generationally, these old people are stuck in the past. They're still catching up. My grandmother hardly knows how to use a smartphone. She knows hardly nothing about the universe and the cosmos or politics. She didn't have the internet around when she was born. And we want to give something as important as a position as a president, someone who runs the nation, to old people that are on their death doors. A nation that should be prosperous and youthful, and we want to give it to these old hags who are living in old times and have an old mindset. So I'm sick of seeing a bunch of old, wrinkled up hags that are about to be knocking on death's doors. I mean, Hillary Clinton literally is going through major health issues right now. She has like, I forget the name of it, but if you Google it, it's like, and Bernie Sanders, like, come on. I mean, it's just disgusting. It's disgusting. I want to see some young youth that are inspiring, that are with the times, not these old folks, these old ways of thinking, sculpting policies. I mean, think of the people who write laws for the internet and stuff. All these politicians in Congress who pass laws on internet and cybersecurity and all. These old fuckers know nothing about this shit. Most of them can barely use their Blackberries. And they're in there writing policies on how to run the internet. They don't even know what the internet hardly is and how to run it. They probably don't even know how to access the deep web. It's crazy. We should be giving experts in their fields. We should be, when we want to look at the issue of economics or minimum wage, we shouldn't look at politicians. We should look at the economists and what are they saying? What are the experts saying? When we look at how we should deal with the internet, let's look at the experts, the cybersecurity experts and stuff and all that stuff. But no, we look at these old ass politicians and lawyers and all these other people who know nothing about the things that they're writing policies on. Most of them, you can even find out, don't even read the bills that they pass. Some of them, they even do tricky little things where they'll have a bill that's thousands of pages long and they'll slip it on their table a couple hours before they have to pass it, and they physically can't read it in time or read the entire thing. You even have politicians in YouTube clips admitting that no, they didn't read the bill, they just voted on it. It's absurd. The system and the world we live in, it is the Truman Show. It's the Matrix. I think well, I don't really believe these things, but I'm just trying to make a point that it's a circus show. I can't believe it. That this is the reality of the situation. Things are so upside down and backwards. And I love the quote, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, because I feel these are the times that'll test the human race. This is the time that the next probably 100 years will be the make or break for the human race, I feel. We'll either go extinct or we'll thrive and populate stars. That's what I feel. 100%. And I think all the issues we're having right now and why it's coming to a head so quick is because technology. Because like I said in a previous podcast, 98% of human existence, or 99%, we lived in simple, basic hunter or gatherer type situations. And it's only been literally the last, 20 years or so since the birth of the internet, and 100 years or so since like industrial revolution. I mean, literally 100 years ago or so, barely the birth of the car to now, astronauts in space, rovers on Mars, and probing Pluto with satellites. I mean, unbelievable in 100 years. So I think that's why we're having a lot of the issues we're having too, is we lived such a simple life and we didn't have to think about all these complex issues before. We kind of just tried to survive and live. And then now, we got internet, nuclear bombs, all these other crazy things, and it's making the human species having to really, really, really understand how we want to move forward and how we want to live our lives and how we want to prosper. Because we could really, very easily mess this up and blow ourselves into Ice Age Or the Stone Age, I mean. You know, it hasn't been that long ago since we had a world war, and I'd make the argument for you right now that we're currently in a world war. Russia attacking Syria, U.S. attacking Canada's over. We're in a war. We're living in World War IV right now. Or World War III, or whatever the hell it is now. Who knows? There's been so many goddamn wars. And we're watching it play out. And it's insane. And I always used to look back and think, like, I like studying history. And I like studying World War II and the Nazis and stuff like that. And I was like, how the hell were so many people so complacent while they were rounding Jews up, putting them in concentration camps, burning them, pushing them in buses and train carts, and hauling them off. It's like, when this was going on and all this purging was going, how did the populace just be so complacent? It's so easy to understand now. We're complacent. We're living in situations like this today. Our government takes our money and blows up people in the Middle East. Collateral damage, innocents killed, which creates blowback. The government's creating more terrorists than they can kill. And that's the true problem. That we probably wouldn't have the terrorist issues if we stayed the hell out of the business of the Middle East. We shouldn't be policing the world. It's not our problem. Let the individuals in their own community deal with each other. So we're coming up now, 56 minutes. I think I'm going to wrap it up. But I will be doing episode 4 very soon. Not sure exactly when yet. But if you're enjoying the Anarchist podcast, I hope you guys are, then make sure to share. Smash the thumbs up button. Do all these little things that'll help get this information out there because it's very important. You know, and it's very sad that you'll go to a video of a cat or something stupid on YouTube and it'll have literally hundreds of thousands or so thumbs up. But these issues and these podcasts or other people, not even myself, but other intellectuals who do podcasts and are talking about very, very important issues surrounding our civilization, and you'll see very little likes and shares. So we really, us intellectuals, we got to stick together. We gotta freedom fighters. We gotta like as much as these sheeple like. We gotta share as much as these idiots will share their shit across their social media platforms and stuff like that. So we have to be as vigorous as they are. Because we know the hordes of sheeple, well, they just love to share, like, and all that, thumbs up. So we need to learn to do the same and put the information on the forefront. So make sure to hit the thumbs up button. And, encourage me to do more videos like this. Episode 4, I think I'm going to talk about some really, really touchy issues. Ones that people don't like to talk about, but I feel need to be talked about. And me, personally, just to give you another more insight into myself, I love to talk about the things that people don't like to talk about. I don't know, it's just me. It's my personality type, I guess. So when it comes to racism that people don't like to talk about, because I want to talk about this. So we're going to indulge into racism probably in episode 4. And we'll also talk about MRA, men's rights, versus the feminist movement. And we'll talk about the gender pay gap and all these other stupid ass things that come along with the feminists and stuff like that. And there are some things, there's bad in both realms, so I'm not going to be one-sided. But we'll talk about MRA and versus feminism. We'll talk about gender pay gap in the next episode. We'll talk about racism, like I said, and maybe we'll even get into IQs and stuff, which is a very, very, very hot topic as well, and general differences between the races and the sexes. Just like we can generally say that men are stronger than women, well, there are a lot of other generalizations that we can now know for a fact, and we will talk about in that next episode, that shows why we end up with issues like gender pay gaps civilizations or societies that seem to do better than other ones and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about that. Because to me, race is not an issue. We're all human beings. This is what really bothers me as a liberty activist, is I thought we were through with racism. I thought it's a non-issue. I thought we realized that, most of us are just human beings, and, we didn't really want to touch the race issue, but now that it's being brought up, all right, well, let's look at it. And I've looked at it, and I've learned some things about it. And I learned just like how we can generalize and say that men are on general stronger and have a more muscle mass and bigger frame than women do. We can also generalize between the races. And maybe a lot of these generalities explain the states of the culture that we see. So it's a very, very, very interesting conversation we'll have in episode 4. A lot of touchy subjects that'll definitely get one thinking. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it on that one as well. And I think I'm going to wrap up the podcast now. So hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in that next one, episode 4 of the Anarchist podcast. This was episode 3. And if you guys missed episode 1 and 2, make sure to go check them out. Episode 1 was a very good one, talking about a lot of political issues. Episode 2 was a little bit different. I talked about a bunch of aliens and the cosmos and black holes and all that kind of fun stuff. And this one was also a little bit more political and stuff. And the next one will be a little off and different. And maybe episode 5 we'll get into some other things like conspiracy theories, which ones are real and false, and all the bullshit out there and misinformation. So a lot of interesting stuff coming out at the Anarchist podcast. So make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you guys in that next one, episode 4. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, episode 3. Peace. See you guys later.